Hey guys, in this video we are going to see how to restore the control file if in case we accidentally deleted one of the control file, or if the control file one of the control file is corrupted on an Oracle database, right? So control file is a very crucial file which controls and coordinates all the information related to the data, right? So um, what a control file does is, control file contains all the important information related to the database, the data file location, the read log file location, and it contains the backup location, it contains the database name, right? So a lot of crucial information is stored by the control file, right? And it also synchronizes the sequence between the control file header. So checkpoint is the one which synchronizes the control file header with the data file header to make sure that the control file is ahead of the data file SCN, right? So always the control file header should be having the latest sequence control number SCN, right? And also it should be in synchronized with the data file header. Say for example, if the control file header is having an SCN of 1000, then the data file header may be having 990, say for example, right? So checkpoint, what it does, it just makes sure that the control file header and data file header are in sync. So again, once the checkpoint happens, DBWR will write all the dirty buffers to the data file so that the data file header also will be updated till the latest SCN, right? So this is how generally an Oracle database behave. And if in case the control file header is behind the data file header, say for example, if the control file header is 990 and if the data file header is 1000, then this means that this data file is fuzzy. We call it as a fuzzy data file because it is ahead of the control file header. So there is a consistency issue, there is a data mismatch between the control file header and the data file header, right? So if the control file header is ahead, right, so the previous example that we saw, right, so if the control file header is 1000 and if it is greater than the data file header, then this means that we need some recovery, right? So we need the recovery either in the form of the log switch, right? So once the log switch happens, the DBWR writes all the dirty buffer and it will sync the data file headers with the control file header. The only thing is, it should not be control file header should not be less than the data file header. It means that there is a inconsistency in the data. Okay, so I will give you a lot of other scenarios. So there are a lot of other scenarios with respect to the control file header and the data file header, but as of now we'll focus on the scenario where if control file is lost, then what can be done, right? So first of all, we need to understand what are all the details control file stores, right? So here if you see, there are a lot of information. The main information is the database name, DB ID, checkpoint SCN, radio information. If you see, everything, almost everything is important. All the data, metadata that is stored in the control file, everything is important, right? So it also contains the incarnation history, backup information. So backup and incarnation history and Orman records, these are secondary. Also we can keep archive as the secondary, but all data file related information, the checkpoint, SCN, DBID, database name, so these are primary, which is very important for the database to function properly. Okay, so backup, even if there is the backup information is not there in the control file, we can still sustain, right? So actual data will not be in trouble, but if the data file metadata or if the checkpoint SCN is corrupted, right, so then we will be in trouble. So what it does not store, control file does not store the table data, which means the actual data. So control file generally it is a metadata file, that's it. It contains the metadata of all the database information. So it does not store the indexes, it does not store the undo information, and it does not store any dictionary, data dictionary information in the SGA. Okay, so all these informations are stored in the data file because these are actual data, the application data. So actual application data will not be stored by the control file. And these are the common errors we will encounter when a control file is lost or when a control file is not available. Okay, always it starts with a 2, okay, ORA-002, and followed by some numbers. It will be a three digit number, like 2, it starts from 200. Okay, so control file errors always starts from 200. So if you see ORA error something like this, 002 star, so you can replace any numbers in place of the star. So the 200 unit of this number represents control file issue or error. And so this is how the startup happens, right? So you should be already knowing the Oracle architecture. So when we start the database, first it reads the SP file or P file for all the parameters, then allocate the SGA, then starts the background process. So this is when actual the shift happens, right? So until this, the database will be in no mount state, where all this processing will be done. The background process start allocating the memory, right? So when the database needs to be mounted, right, first Oracle reads the control file. So this is when it will just locate the control file. So the control file location will be there in the either in the P file or SP file, and then it just open the control file, right, which means it reads the header of the control file for the metadata information. Then it compares the headers between the data file and its own header, right, whether the data file header and the control file header are in sync. So it chooses the latest checkpoint information from the control file, and also it reads the records, the log file metadata and the data file metadata, and then mount the database. Okay, so this is how the regular startup happens. And when the Oracle mounts the database, right, so the control file becomes the main authority, which means it controls the database once the mount once the database is mounted. It does not scan all the data files to reconstruct the database structure during the normal startup, but because that would be expensive, right? So instead of that, what Oracle does, Oracle just reads the control file into the memory. Okay, so there will be a cache layer in the memory. So it reads and stores all the information in the memory. Then it validates the control file header for the DBID information. So every database will be having a unique DBID. Then compatibility information and the checkpoint information. Then it builds an in-memory structure describing the data files, read log files. So it is kind of a blueprint, right? So a logical blueprint. So every time when you start the database, this is how it happens. So it reads the control file, looks for all these information, then creates a blueprint of all these files, the logical location of these files. So actual physical file also should be located. So it just creates a blueprint, then it will just locate all the file. It just checks all the data file, it opens the data file for the application, right? Then it validates the header against the metadata of the control file, whether all the information are matching with the control file, whether there are any inconsistencies. All these information will be validated. Then finally it determines whether a media recovery is required by comparing the checkpoint is seen with the redo information, right? So this is what I mentioned, right? So if the control file header is having 1000 and if the data file header is having 900, then there is remaining 100 blocks should be updated on the data file, right? So that's when this media recovery happens. Okay, automatically Oracle will read the online read log file or the archive log file and fetch all the remaining 100 and just synchronize the data file by flushing all the data to the data file. Okay, so now let us just see the scenario of what happens when one control file gets lost. Okay, so I'm connected to the database. My database is up and running, so let me just check the database status. So you can check the control files by using show parameter control file, or you can use this select star from $v control file. Okay, we can also check the control file type. So always the control file type should be current. Okay, currently it should be the database should be having the control file active. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to remove one of the control file manually. So first let us validate if these control files are physically present on the mount point. So if you see, we have both these control files. Okay, so now I'm just going to accidentally, or you can imagine, so in a real-time system obviously anything may happen, right? So either the control file may get corrupted, or DBA may be deleting the control file mistakenly, like human errors, right? So instead of deleting some other file, he just deleted the control file. Okay, so if only one control file is lost, then it is very easy to again start the database. Okay, only thing is we will be having a minimal downtime, right? Because obviously when one control file is lost, the database will be running, but we may so when you execute any query, right, so I'm able to connect to the database, but when I execute any query, if you see, Oracle somehow identified that one of the control file is lost. So as I already mentioned, whatever control file errors that you get, it starts with 200. So here if you see 2010, 202. So it says cannot open the specified control file, unable to open the file, this error. So you can use this ORA utility to check what is the error, right? It says cannot open the control file, check to make sure that action is check to make sure that the file exists and it's not logged by some other program. This message reports the name file involved in other messages. See associated error messages for a description of the problem. Okay, so as of now I just removed the file. So in real time there may be some other situation as well, right? So some other program may access the file as well, right? So we can also simulate that by creating a lock on this control file, right? So manually I can also simulate this by just use some utility to lock this specific file, right? So that the Oracle database may not be able to access the control file. Okay, so now this is very easy. So if you see, if you execute any query, so instance is still open. If you see, if you execute $v instance, it is still open. So currently the database is running with the other control file. Okay, we have one more control file in spare. So database is somehow running, but still it may not last long, right? Obviously if we are doing some activity, right? So if I try to access the $v data file, it is immediately throwing the error, right? So I cannot even add any space, right? So let me just try adding space. Okay, if you see, I cannot add any files, right? So even a basic modification is not allowed, because if another control file is not in use, then obviously Oracle has to update both the control files. So multiplexing is required, and this is for safety purpose. So Oracle is just preventing the DBA to not modify anything, because Oracle has to update both the control files when any modification happens at the metadata level, right? So all this file information should be stored in the control file header. So now how to recover this? We have no other option. We need some downtime, so we need to abort the database. Okay, just copy the control file from the primary location to the secondary location where the control file is not there. Just validate it if this file exists, right? So it's not there, so I'm just going to copy it. Okay, so now after copy I'm able to see the file. Okay, so now I can just start the database. Before that I will just show you without this control file what happens. It will just throw ORA-205 error. Oracle will not mount the database. It says error in identifying control file, check alert log for more info. So previously we got some other error, right? 2010, 202, and when we shut down the database and start the database, it throws 205 error. So we'll not be able to start without the control file. So again I'm just going to copy and then just mount the database. Oracle will not mount without any control file, right? So as the startup phase, uses the control file to mount the database. So now I'll just open it. We don't need any recovery because we have all the archives in place, and also we have the redos, right? So only the control file is lost, and still we have another control file, so we don't need any incomplete recovery. So now the database is open. So this is how we can restore the control file, not restore, but just copy the control file from the backup location. It is as simple as that. Okay, so it is just a 1 or 2 minute activity, that's it, if you lose only one control file. Okay, so if you lose both the control files, or if you have any other issues, right, so during those times it is quite an extra additional steps that we need to do. Okay, so in the future sessions and future videos we'll be seeing different scenarios related to the recovery and restore of any files that gets lost.